Welcome to Opalesque. I'm here in Sao Paulo together with Mauro Cunha from Mauá-Sekular Investimentos. It's one of the largest and most established Brazilian hedge funds, or multi-mercado fundos, how they are called here. Mauro, tell us a bit about your company.
Mauá was founded 5 years ago. Our founding partner was Luiz Fernando Figueiredo. He's a former director of the Brazilian Central Bank. After leaving the central bank, he joined Arminio Fraga and started in Gavea. And a couple of years later, they split up for geographical reasons. Gavea remained in Rio de Janeiro, and Mauá started in Sao Paulo as a new firm. So this was about 5 years ago, and the firm has grown, shrunk with the crisis. Now it manages approximately 650 million reais in macro and equity funds. I joined in 2007, and I am the head of equities. So I'm responsible for the equity funds, and our team is also responsible for the equity part of the macro funds that we manage.
And what did you do before joining?
I was with Franklin Templeton, starting their local operations in Brazil, and I've been with them for 6 years. So my entire career focusing on Brazilian stocks in different funds, mostly with a bottom-up perspective. And this is a background that is very useful to the way we approach equity investing in Brazil. It's important to mention that among the hundreds of managers that we have in Brazil, most of them will tell a client that they do long-term value investing, bottom-up and so forth, which seems to us to be a very crowded place to be. So not only Brazil is changing, there are other types of opportunities in Brazil, but everybody is trying to approach equities in the same way. So at Mauá, we have developed a different investment philosophy, which takes advantage not only of our bottom-up equity team that we have in place, but also from the reputation that the firm has built in the top-down macro fundamentals. We have not only people with very strong careers in macro funds, but also very significant investments in macro research. So the process that we have developed is actually able to establish a communication between these two areas, which is very hard to do. Let me make clear, it took us a long time to get the process right and make sure that we could take the best from each approach. So today we follow a philosophy that we call pragmatic fundamentalism. It relies on the bottom-up investing with a very strong preoccupation about corporate governance aspects of investing. And we add to it the macro fundamentals, which mean not only the short-term movements in interest rates or GDP growth rates, but also the industry trends, sectors, and the long-term issues that will affect the market.
And the investment universe that you are focusing on?
We focus mostly on Brazil. We do use some tools that relate to the international market, mostly for hedging purposes, but we are specialists in Brazil, both on our macro fund and in our equity funds. Our performance has been quite interesting so far. Our main equity fund, which was established about four years ago, has a performance since inception above 30 percentage points, meaning 30 percentage points above the benchmark, which is the Bovespa index. Last year, the fund outperformed the Bovespa by 21 percentage points. And this year, we are 1.5 points below the index at this point. This is a mandate that explicitly aims to outperform the Bovespa, using tools related to market timing and stock picking. And to do that, we are allowed to undertake a little bit of leverage. We can take cash positions if we want, and we can also undertake some short positions.
How much is a little bit of leverage?
Mostly 20%. So this fund is net invested between 70 and 120%. This is a very clear mandate. Another important aspect to mention is that Mauá has a very strong culture in terms of risk management. This is really a cornerstone of the company. We rely on a proprietary system that was built throughout the years that allow us to have real-time a real-time view of our portfolios and the risks that we're taking. The main risk management tool that we follow is the maximum loss under stress, but we do follow other risk measurements as well, such as VaR, tracking error, and so forth. In our view, in volatile markets like Brazil, measures like VaR have problems because they will be severely affected by the short-term volatility. Risk management, again, is a very fundamental part of what we do, and the risk management approach to equities is somewhat unique in the Brazilian market. In addition to that mandate, which is called Mauá Bolsa, we also have Mauá Empresas. That was started at the end of 2008, so it has a somewhat shorter track record. And this is a deep value fund which runs a very concentrated portfolio with 10 securities maximum, and has a very solid fundamental approach. Even the short positions that we take, they are fundamentally based, so it's not long short or short-term selling opportunities. We take companies that we really perceive to be overvalued, and we take long-term short positions in them as well. This fund is doing very well. It's still very early to judge the track record, in our opinion, but it has some interesting features as well. For example, it is one of the first funds in the Brazilian market that charges a performance fee on an annual basis and not a semi-annual basis, as is the practice in the market. The reason we're doing this is that we believe that this aligns the interests of the manager and the client in a much better way. So, since this is a long-term oriented fund, it makes sense that the incentive structure should also be long-term.
What is the best way for foreign investors to invest in Brazil?
Well, today the usual way is establishing vehicles, offshore vehicles in jurisdictions like the Cayman Islands, Luxembourg, and so forth. I would argue that the Brazilian structure of mutual funds has a much better framework than these other jurisdictions. We have a much more transparent structure. Our NAVs are published every day. We have daily liquidity in most of our funds. We have an independent regulator that has shown a great deal of diligence, not only improving the regulatory framework but also enforcing regulations, which is very important. We have segregation of functions here, meaning that the manager is not the administrator, is not the custodian, there's an independent auditor. So all the pieces of the fund's governance are in place in Brazil in a much clearer way than in these other jurisdictions. The reason why foreign investors do not invest directly in these vehicles is basically tax related. There's some foreign exchange issues as well, but mostly taxes. One would have to pay the 15% capital gains tax to invest in an equity fund in Brazil, whereas this tax does not exist if one invests through Cayman. In my honest opinion, maybe this 15% is a small price to pay for the increased transparency and oversight that investors would have in Brazil as opposed to the more traditional jurisdictions.